We have seen Jesus do physical healing, cast out demons, and even demonstrate authority over nature. Now we will see him take spiritual authority over sin and continue to amaze the multitudes. You are welcome to join me as we're going to continue to sing through this song verse by verse. Wonderful, merciful Savior, precious Redeemer and friend, who would have thought that a lamb could rescue the souls of men? Oh, you rescue the souls of men. Rescue the souls of men? Well, the scribes certainly didn't believe that was within his power. And they were extremely upset. He told the paralytic that his sins were forgiven. The faith of his 4 friends was what caused them to even bring their friend to Jesus. They were determined enough and they had enough faith that Jesus could heal him, to the extent that they destroyed someone's roof, accomplishing their goal. But they never considered forgiveness. So why did Jesus choose to forgive his sins before healing him? The paralytic, as was true with many Jews, most likely believed that the cause of sickness and infirmity was one's own sin, or that of a parent or even a grandparent. The scribes present would not have believed any differently. Jesus knew that, so possibly, to set the paralytic's mind to rest, Jesus told him his sins were forgiven. This would have brought great relief and peace to the man. Because Jesus was aware of the scribes' evil hearts, he went ahead and healed the man to show that he indeed had authority to do both. Matthew tells us that the crowds who witnessed the healing were first afraid, but then they glorified God. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. But did the crowds realize that their hearts were hungering for this one, this Jesus? They knew they were looking for the long-awaited Messiah. But could this man be the one? No, at this point, they just believed he was a great prophet who was doing the works of God through healing. The truth had not yet sunk in that this man could be the Messiah, the king that was to come. But they did fully understand the healing that came from Jesus' mercy and compassion that he showered on the people. But it was not yet time to see him as king. Counselor, Comforter, Keeper, Spirit we long to embrace. You offer hope when our hearts have hopelessly lost our way. Oh, we've hopelessly lost our way. The tax collectors of the day had definitely lost their way. They had basically sold out to the Roman government and were despised by their fellow Jews. But Jesus saw one who had promise, Matthew, and called him to follow, which he did immediately. And because Matthew was a hospitable sort, he invited Jesus and his disciples to his home for a meal. Pretty soon, his fellow tax collectors and other notable sinners showed up as well. But then there was another group had lost their way as well, the Pharisees. They did their typical criticism of Jesus, this time because of him eating with this despicable lot. But Jesus was quick to point out that he was here for the lost, for those who were spiritually sick. Jesus challenges the Pharisees to go and learn what it meant to be merciful. He was calling them to something other than just offering temple sacrifices. He was calling them to be personally sacrificial in their relationship with the people, something they hadn't shown any interest in for many, many years. At a later time, when the disciples of John came to ask why Jesus and his disciples weren't fasting, Jesus tried to explain that while the bridegroom was present, it was time for rejoicing, and that he was bringing a new teaching, a spiritual wholeness, a fulfillment of the law. It wasn't just a matter of trying to fix what the law had become. It was offering regeneration, a new life, a totally new way of living. The old man was passing away, and a new man was being born. Almighty infinite Father, faithfully loving your own, here in our weakness you find us, falling before your throne. Oh, we're falling before your throne. Those who recognize their weakness and limitations also recognize Jesus' ability to bring them healing and hope. An authority of the law, a scribe, Mark tells us, his name is Jairus, comes and kneels before Jesus. Even though Jairus had authority himself, he now humbly comes to Jesus in faith, recognizing that Jesus was the only one with the authority and power to heal his child. She was sick to the point of death, and Jairus realized he could do nothing, nor could anyone else, but he trusted that this Jesus could. So Jesus agrees to go with him, but on the way, Mark tells us Jesus felt power leave him. He knew someone had touched him. He identifies the woman and acknowledges her need and has her tell her story. Jairus' plight of his very ill daughter with public knowledge, as opposed to this unidentified woman's very private bleeding issue she had been struggling with for 12 years, the very number of years Jairus' daughter had been alive. We know that a loss of blood can cause physical weakness, so it only stands to reason that she would not have been a strong woman, weakened by her ailment. But she had so much faith that she knew if she could just touch his garment, she would be healed. And she was healed immediately. Jesus encourages her that her faith has indeed made her well. Jesus allowed Jairus to witness this nameless woman's healing to possibly strengthen his own faith that Jesus did indeed have the power and authority, mercy and compassion to heal, including his now dead daughter. Mark writes that while they began their journey again, Jairus received a message from some of his household that the girl had died. But Jesus assures Jairus not to fear, but only believe. When they get to the house, Jesus sends the professional mourners away as Jesus tells them the girl isn't dead, she's just sleeping. They all knew better and actually laughed at him, but did as they were told. Jesus goes in, takes her by the hand, and the girl rises from the bed. Word spread quickly throughout the area of the miraculous things Jesus was doing. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. There were two blind men who had heard and were well aware of Jesus' healing power and came seeking him. They were following him as best they could, possibly led by others, and crying out loudly, hoping Jesus would hear them. They even were determined enough to make it into the house behind Jesus. They were so convinced of who Jesus was that they even called him the Son of David. Their faith was incredibly strong as they begged Jesus to have mercy on them and heal them. Jesus saw the strength of their faith and stated that according to that faith, they would be healed. And we're told that their eyes were opened. Jesus warns them not to tell anyone, but how could they not? They were filled with joy at their healing from a merciful and compassionate Jesus and spread his fame throughout the area. The final event that Matthew shares in this section is of Jesus healing the mute demon-possessed man. The faithful bring him to Jesus, and because of their faith, the demon was cast out. The crowds were amazed and proclaimed that nothing like this had ever been seen in Israel. Jesus had become renowned for his mercy and compassion toward those suffering. But the Pharisees attempted to malign these miraculous works by attributing them to demonic powers. Matthew has already shown us that the Pharisees were not believers, they were hypocrites, and not to be trusted. So he doesn't even acknowledge their ridiculous claim with a rebuttal, but just chooses to record their feeble attempt to discredit Jesus. Matthew goes on to tell us that Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in the synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. The same words he used to start this whole section out with. So he also writes that when Jesus saw the crowds, that he had compassion for them because they were helpless. They were like sheep without a shepherd. Wonderful, merciful Savior, precious Redeemer and friend, who would have thought that a lamb could rescue the souls of men? Oh, you rescue the souls of men. Jesus came to rescue the souls of men. His mercy and compassion for the lost was demonstrated over and over and over again. The last thing in this section that he tells his disciples is that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. So your challenge today is, how can you be a laborer in the harvest? Jesus had a heart full of mercy and compassion. Can we be like Jesus? Can we have that same mercy and compassion for others? Will you ask Jesus to fill your heart with mercy and compassion for those who are lost without a shepherd? They're everywhere. The lost are everywhere. They're surrounding us everywhere. Let us seek out how God is calling us to be an answer to that prayer regarding the harvest, not the least by showing mercy and compassion towards others. If you will stand with me again, we're going to close with this same song. And hopefully you'll go out singing this song as well, and remembering what we talked about today in regards to this.